So during the trip, what other shifts were you noticing in your body? Like, could you notice if you had become like more relaxed, or were there other things that were feeling different in your body during that trip?
I think, well, it's interesting because you're so focused on the physical exertion at times that you don't get caught up in anything else. You're like one step in front of the other. Don't fall off this cliff and die. Like just um, in. I don't want to sound dramatic, but in a way, you're just surviving. That's the kind of point, to survive outside in the wild and connect to those kind of like just our most fundamental roots. But I can say there were a few moments like leading up to that shift where the one night where we stayed, it was on the banks of this kind of like a pond, a lake, surrounded by cliffs. And we were the only people there. And around sunset, I went out and sat by myself and like found a little rock to sit on, like kind of in the water shore, and meditated for a while. And I just felt like so light, and like I did not, like, life was good. Like everything was okay. And then later that night, once the sun went down, it was really dark. We could see like every star in the sky. And because it was such a remote place, there's no light pollution. And this was a very popular site for backpackers to stay at. And somehow we were the only ones there. And it just felt like this like once in a lifetime moment. And like I remember all like that, every moment of that evening so well. I felt like it was transformational. And then had a few similar experiences like that, where we rise over this crest and the fog is lifting, and we saw this like majestic elk, and like just at that time, like a ray of sunlight was shining down on him through the clouds breaking up, and just like these really, really like, holy shit, is this our life right now moments. So between the like just focusing on one foot in front of the next, and then just being able to step back and filling your heart and soul with so much gratitude, there was no room for anything else. Like, you know?
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. So I really, believe that um, that is, at least for me, that is what it took. I had to like get outside of my mind, and I had to like nourish my soul and my spirit to heal myself first.
Because everything is working together.
Absolutely. Yeah. And my acupuncturist said the same thing. She had lived out west for a while, and she had told me how she would go to the Grand Canyon and drive all the time to sit in the Grand Canyon, and she would always reinforce these sentiments that I would share with her. And when I got back, she would say, "You're doing better. You're more relaxed." She would confirm, and without even me like provoking it by sharing what I was sensing as a shift, she would go ahead and acknowledge that herself. So it definitely kind of confirmed what I was thinking, and I was really grateful to have. Well, I needed a boost from Western medicine. I was really, really grateful to have her and acupuncture and the other like supplemental healing in my life, because I don't think I could have gotten there just with the clinical stuff.
Yeah. Something that's interesting about how, I guess, conventional Western medicine is practiced is they focus on the physical. So they say humans have a physical body, so they treat what's physical with something physical. So they never really go under the surface and talk about your spirit, your energy, your emotions, because they deal with what's physical, right?
And I wanted that. And, you know, I think that if I could, you know, share that with any warrior on her own journey, my advice would be to find that balance in whatever that looks like for you. You know, it doesn't have to be going on like crazy backpacking trips out west. Certainly not. You know, you know, maybe it's Reiki. It's
Yeah.
with you. It's um, diving into a good book, having a good conversation. You know, it's um, but just find that balance to nurture your body and your soul. Um, I think it's really important.
Whew, have to pause there. Such a journey and such a story. So as you're here and are looking back, is there anything that you would have done differently?
Yeah, as I alluded to, I am definitely that Aries Ram, full throttle, no patience kind of person. So I feel like I was like, okay, I want to get pregnant. Time to call a clinic, get me on some meds. Let's do it. And I would have slowed that roll a little bit. And honestly, I mean, hindsight's 2020. I don't want to say I have regrets because it wouldn't have been this baby at this time. But I think getting off birth control, um, probably even years before I did, would have been a good step. And starting some more of that healing that I had talked about. Um, you know, and it. I want to say that that's it's not a practice that you should stop once you get your result, whether it's
Mhm.
that pregnancy or it's that job or passing that exam or whatever goal you have. I think it's a lifelong practice. So having incorporated that practice into my life sooner rather than later, of course, would have been nice. But the most practical thing I can think of would be to have gotten off birth control and letting my body start the process of healing itself.
And for those who might be listening and don't know what the impact is of birth control on the body or on fertility later in life, share more about that.
Yeah, and um, I'm no medical expert, so I can't speak too clinically about it. But how it was explained to me by my acupuncturist was that, you know, my body was a little irregular, and I was born that way. And when I was a young adolescent, doctors kind of tried to correct that by putting me on birth control at a very young age when it, according to my acupuncturist, and I would tend to agree, might not have been necessary because, in effect, my body never had the opportunity to self-correct.
Mm.
So perhaps by my early to mid 20s, my cycle would have gotten regular by itself.
Mm.
Um, and, I, as a transient person going to school, living in different states and cities, and I would get off it and on it and then on different kinds. And I think it just threw a hell of a lot at my body. And I just never, I think we take that for granted. Like the availability of prescription drugs is so easily accessible that, like, do we ever stop and think like, what is this really doing to our bodies, and what is the long-term effect of some of that, and are there other options, like maybe not like the easy quick fix, but um, what are some other solutions to heal my body naturally? I think that's how I've learned that, like, to orient and question, have that disposition with everything now, so even if I get a headache, before I pop some Tylenol, can I have some tea, or do I just need to rest for a minute, or am I not drinking enough water, or so yeah, I think that was what birth control did, was a potential harm that birth control had for me and other women that I've talked to, and what I've heard from my acupuncturist and some others. But I think it's also just a healthy orientation to kind of think that through, and a variety of our lifestyle choices.
For another birth warrior who is on the fertility journey and has probably done a few cycles that haven't been successful and now feel like they might not even have the strength to keep going, what advice would you offer to that person?
Oh, so many things. Don't compare yourself with anybody else. It has to be like number one. And that was so hard for me because I kept seeing them drop like flies, like friends, coworkers, acquaintances, all getting knocked up. And I would say, why not me? And I would be, the triggers that we often hear about, and you can really get caught up and you can become bitter and just recoil into this ball, and do whatever you can to not go there would be my advice. For me, it was getting off Facebook. It, again, just like the backpacking, like that isn't going to work for everybody. So you do you, but like, don't be afraid to prioritize what you need to do, protect yourself, and don't be apologetic for that.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned essential oils earlier.
Yeah.
I had a interview with someone just yesterday who she sells essential oils through doTERRA and helps people to choose the right ones based on like what's going on in their body. So I'd love to hear about your experience using essential oils, like which ones resonated with you and how did you use them?
Yeah, so at first I used it more as like aromatherapy. I loved bergamot and lang lang, really like all of these sweet citrus smells for calming. I diffused them. I had roller balls I would put on my skin, and I would also have the porous bracelets that I could wear, and then it would just kind of like always ground me. And I try to also use them intentionally with like chakras and my sacral chakra, or while I was meditating or doing yoga. Um, and then I did get into some others that were specifically for progesterone. Um, Progesterone development, I guess. There's like sweet yam extract that is supposed to be really helpful for that. So I I purchased some specifically for infertility that would like help with your progesterone production. Those are, you're not really supposed to use that with other fertility drugs or efforts, so like you have to be kind of careful when you use them and how you use them, but it got to the point where it's hard to say like what specifically worked. I think Another thing I did was I drank a lot of pomegranate juice. I ate pineapple core. I had my raspberry leaf tea. I consume maca powder in like smoothies or like yogurt, stuff like that. So I did like a whole blend of all of those. I don't know if one did it or one didn't do it. But there's something I think to be said about the psychology of taking steps that you feel are empowering you and that are healthy. So, like, some people call that all like wish wash, old wives' tales. But, like, if it's making you feel better and it can't hurt because it's giving your body all of these nutrients, or it's making you feel calm, or it's making you feel in control, then just go ahead and do it, girlfriend.
Yeah. And as we know, the mind, body, and spirit are all intertwined. So if using incense is nourishing your spirit, then yeah, go ahead.
Right.
Right.
Block out the noise of the outside world. Yeah.
So you're now pregnant. When you just learned that you were pregnant, what emotions were coming up for you?
Well, because of that, like, false pregnancy, I was much more reserved than I was the first time, but it was different because even before taking that test, my breasts were tender. I was really out of breath walking my dog. And so I had a feeling. I remember specifically, like, I called my husband, 'cause he was still at work, rather than like waiting for him to come home and having like a really special moment. Because I was like, you know what, this doesn't work out. Like, we're gonna keep it cool. We're gonna keep it cool. So I was just like, keep it cool.
Yeah.
Like, and try not to get too high. Try to just keep it even. But it was really hard because, like, I was like doing a little dance inside the whole time, right? But then I think at like the 7 week, um, because I was going through a fertility clinic, they do an early ultrasound, look for a heartbeat. So I had that heartbeat, and that was really reassuring. And then we had the ultrasound at like 10 or 11 weeks. And that's when I was like, okay, this is really real. And so progressively in that first trimester, I was allowing myself to feel joy and accept, like, you're going to be a mama now. It's happening more and more. But it was just so much disbelief. Like, like, is it actually happening? Because you get to a point where you don't think it ever will.
Wow. Okay, so you're pregnant in a very interesting time. You know, the shifts and the transformations happening in our world right now. I don't think we've ever seen some of them. So what is it like to be pregnant in this time that we're living in?
Yeah. Which it's especially challenging because I'm I'm having a white boy,
Mhm.
and um, I am going to want the absolute best for him. I want him to get into the best schools or have the best job, but my work has been so rooted in social justice and equity, and so and all of that is really in the spotlight right now. And with the Black Lives Matter movement, and hoping to God there's a major transformational shifts in our society. So it's been really interesting, like, holding space for this human I'm growing, and yet wanting nothing more but for there to be space for others. Um, so I've been able to connect with other mothers of white boys who share my kind of disposition in the world and or my line of work. And you know, it's sweet, you know, they're just like, for so much of this work, it's going to take the people in privilege to own the privilege, to make room. And so the more people we have raising white men the right way, the better our world is going to be. So then I was like, okay, that's how I'm going to look at this. So that helped. Not that we're rich. I mean, not that, you know, he's got a whole lot to work with, but that really helped kind of, not that I don't want it to sound like it was just a weird thing, you know. So that really kind of helped me frame it. And then, you know, just it's really scary with, is he going to have a world to enjoy? I just spent so much time talking about nature and the environment and what is that going to look like for him. And I mean, I could go down the list, from gun control to social justice, to just this fragile state of our democracy and public health. I could go down the list, but I think the sentiment that I've heard is that the new generation coming up, and then even the babies or the yet to be born people are going to have such a better outlook and are going to truly be the ones that save humanity, that save our planet in so many ways. So I think you have to be optimistic, because what choice do we really have? To be anything other than optimistic and full of hope is to give up. And I don't want to raise a little boy that gives up. I want to raise a fighter and a hellraiser. And and so, you know, I'm more powered than ever to be like, hey, you were born at a specific time for a specific reason. Not that you are the Messiah, so let's not get too big of a head. But you and your friends are going to have some work to do. And I'm going to raise you the best I can, so you're empowered to get to work when the time is right.
I love that so much. Wow. Spoken like a true warrior.